welcome to another episode of Coffee and Code Platoon. I'm your host, Greg Drobny, the Student Recruitment and the Community Outreach Manager for Code Platoon. And with me, as always, doing the heavy lifting is Kayla Elkin. Thanks, Kayla, for joining me once again. If you've never been to a Coffee and Code Platoon before, just real quick, it is a very casual endeavor. We are here to answer questions, have questions asked, whatever you guys as an audience come up with as a question. That's what we're here for. This isn't going to be a long, like a presentation and then, hold your questions to the end. We're literally here to answer whatever questions you have in the most casual format possible. So feel free to either type your question into the chat or just come off of mute and say, hey, I've got a question. That's what we're here for. So Kayla, do we have any right away, right off the bat, that we can address first thing?
Yeah, so we had some folks submit questions in advance, so let's start there. So somebody asked, what are the specific steps involved in completing part 2 of the Code Platoon application?
Oh, great question. And if you're coming brand new to us, the Code Platoon has a two-part application process. Part 1 of the application, which you can find linked off of any page on our website, it says apply now. That's going to take you to part 1, which is very simple. That's a basic intake form that's just going to grab some basic information. Part 2 is where things get a bit more involved. We have 3 individual components to part 2, and those are coding challenges. That's the big one right there. A video that you have to make, and some essays you have to write. Now, a lot of people worry about the video and the essays. I'm going to tell you right now, don't put too much stress onto the video and the essays. They do have to be done, but I don't want people to get worried about, we're not looking for college essays and dissertations on coding theory or anything crazy like that. It's a lot having to do with your commitment and this process. The coding challenges, as I said a minute ago, is that's where the real meat starts to happen, if you will. And here's how I like to tell people to think about this. This is not a hoop to jump through to get into a program. We don't want to make it sound like it's a logistical hoop and we're trying to create barriers. We're starting the learning path right away. The pieces of learning to get into the program are the fundamentals of learning to do this as a job. So if you want to become a software engineer, our application process is actually helping you start that path right away. That's what you're doing. You're learning the fundamental skills necessary. So you'll have to complete 10 coding challenges in order to be considered for Code Platoon. But we offer the resources free of charge to be able to learn how to do that. So you could come to us and know absolutely nothing. You could start at 0 and say, I need to start this journey. Where do I start? We have the answer to that question. We have Intro to Coding. We have a free self-paced program that you can start right now, today, off of our website. We have videos to go along with it on YouTube. And we even have a Slack channel where you can ask questions of instructors and TAs to help you along the way. So we have the resources to start your journey, and going through the application process is part of that journey. So the coding challenges, the video will be you talking about how you solved one of the coding challenges. And then the essays are more or less about your commitment to doing this. It's an intense path, and we want people to know that up front. We're not trying to trick people. We're not trying to pretend like this is some super easy thing and snap your fingers and you're done. It is going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be rewarding, but you're going to have to invest your time and energy into it. We want people to know that up front. This application process is a way of confirming that. I hope that answers the question or begins to answer the question, but if there's more follow-up on that, I can certainly go into more detail.
Absolutely. So we have a question in the chat. I'm working on the coding challenges part of the application. Is it better to submit them now, or should I keep refining them and submit it closer to the deadline?
So a general rule that I try to tell people is don't sacrifice a good application just to be early. We are going to consider all applications up to the deadline. Every application that gets submitted up to the deadline is going to be considered equally. You're not going to get extra points for being early. Now, I'm going to offer a caveat to that in just a moment. But submitting a good application is key. Because again, back to what I was saying a minute ago, you're learning this skill. That's what you're doing in the application process. you are actually learning the skills necessary to become a software engineer. So you want to learn them as thoroughly as possible, right? So you want to submit a good application. Don't let that timeline, again, you're not getting extra points for being early. Now, the caveat to that, there's one caveat. If you submit early, so let's say you were a few weeks ahead of the deadline, you submitted your application, the instructors will reach out to you before the deadline. You're not going to have to wait till the deadline to find out if you are accepted or not. They'll reach out to you and let you know if you're accepted or not accepted. And if you're not accepted, you will have a chance to rework your application. And it's very commonly the case that they will give you feedback on what you did wrong, what you can do better. The people who follow that advice are almost always accepted. They go back, they fix what was wrong, they resubmit. If you wait until the deadline, like midnight of the deadline, that's going to be a lot harder to do. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's much harder to do if you're waiting all the way up until the deadline. So again, don't be early just to try and get extra points for being early. Work on it, do as well as you can, learn the material, and submit a good application.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. That brings us to a really good question that we got in advance. How can I ensure my application is good enough to get accepted?
Good question. So the first way to answer that is that these are not tricks. We're not trying to trick people. We want people to actually learn the skill. And when I say that there are coding challenges on the application, what we're doing is we're sending people to a site called CoderByte. That's where the challenges are hosted for the application challenges. When you submit an individual challenge on CoderByte, it will give you a score. I can't tell you definitively what the bottom line score is, but what I can tell you is that if you're scoring 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 on all of your challenges, you're doing really well. So there is a feedback mechanism there in existence, and you'll start to know, you'll start to run test cases and start to understand what you're doing. But again, we do have resources to work with TAs prior to that. We have an Intro to Coding Slack channel that I can get you an invite for, and you can come on board and start asking questions of TAs. I'm not a software engineer myself, so I'm not going to be much help on the technical realm, but I can certainly point you to the right people who can answer those questions and facilitate those questions. I did see that, yeah, you asked, may I have an invite to the Intro to Coding Slack channel? If you could do me a favor and email me, greg@codeplatoon.org, and I'll put my email in the chat, and email me, because I have to do it via email. I have to have your email, and I'll use your email to invite you to Slack. Slack's a weird animal. If you invite someone, it's super easy, but if you try to join on your own, it's a little more difficult. So just email me, greg@codeplatoon.org, and remind me of this. So that way, when we're done with this episode, I'll absolutely send you an invite to join Slack.
I took down your name with the reminder to get you on Slack as well, so we don't forget.
Perfect.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's I'm happy to do that. It takes just a couple of seconds to do, and you will get an invite. You just follow the directions that they send you. Like I said, in some of our material that's out there, I think our Intro to Coding course talks about how you can join Slack. The method that's explained in the Intro to Coding class doesn't actually work. So everybody ends up emailing me anyway. So yeah, you'll save a lot of time if you just email me. Because no, you don't need a codeplatoon.org email address to join Slack. You just need me to send you an invite.
Awesome. So we have a question from Carol. I did the first part of the application 9 or 10 months ago. Do I need to redo that, or can I just do step 2?
You can just do step 2. Yeah, you don't. And in fact, what the information that you put, like if you chose a certain cohort on step 1, and that cohort is no longer there, that's not a big deal. What matters far more is what you do on part 2. The part 1 of our application is really designed to get you started in the process and make sure that you're registered and we're getting you all the information that you need. If you've already done that, yeah, keep going with step 2, as long as you have the relevant resources. If you've lost that, again, email me and I'll happily send you whatever you need. But no, you don't have to redo part 1. You can just keep going as is.
Awesome. So somebody had asked in advance, what common mistakes should I avoid when completing part 2?
Common mistakes. So I would say the most common mistake that I see is to forget that there is something beyond the coding challenges. As I mentioned a moment ago, we do have the video and the essays that have to be complete as well. I get a lot of people who will email me and say, I finished my coding challenges 2 weeks ago. When am I going to find out about how I did? If you don't submit everything off of the part 2 page, if you don't go and submit the full application with the video and the essays, we have no idea you've finished your coding challenges. We have no way of knowing. The instructor who evaluates those applications will never know that you've completed the coding challenges until you finish the whole thing. So make sure that you're doing all of it. That's probably the most common mistake to avoid. The second most common is to worry about, oddly enough, I get a lot of people worried about making the video. Don't. And the short way to say this is just don't worry too much about it. As long as you do the video with the basic parameters of what is explained in the instructions, you're good. There's a reason why we do this, and it will become apparent as you move further in this journey, but really don't. And I say this, one of the examples that comes to mind is that I had someone who had done our coding challenges and scored about a 99% on the coding challenges. They rocked them, and they hadn't finished their application. And I reached out to them and I asked why, and they said it was because they were terrified of making the video. And I said, at this point, with as good as you are at the coding challenges, I swear, unless you are doing something like murdering cats on camera, you're fine, right? So just follow the basic instructions. So those are the two big things: is make sure you're doing it all, and don't get too stressed about making the video. It's pretty basic, it's pretty straightforward, and once you get to that point, I think you'll be fine. The follow-up to that, real quick, before we get to the next question, is make sure you're saving your work on one of your coding challenges so that you can do the video. Because you will need some of your work to explain in the video. That's the purpose of the video. So make sure you're saving some of the work, because if not, you'll probably end up having to redo a challenge.
Thank you. Question in the chat. I live in Chicago, but don't know what is better, to attend in person or to attend remotely. Is one better than the other?
Ooh, now that's a great question. And I think a lot of this comes down to your personal situation. This is one that ultimately people have to answer for themselves. I'll offer two basic thoughts. Number one, I'm kind of an old-fashioned individual, and I don't think that there is any real true substitution for being really, truly in person. I think that is the ideal way to learn if you can do it. However, modern world in which we live, that's often not an option. That being said, the other side to this is that software engineering in general is probably the most conducive skill out there today to being completely remote. You can do this completely remote. You're going to be spending most of your time staring into a computer screen. So you're going to get the same exact training in person and remote. It's not any different. You don't have different training for one versus the other. Now, the one big caveat to this, because of the community we serve, is in relation to your VA benefits. VA benefits change based on whether or not you are attending in person or remote or out of state versus in the city of Chicago or in the state of Illinois. Now, this is a big deal when you talk about something like the GI Bill. If you want to use the GI Bill and you're remote and you're in California, that's not going to work. But if you're in the state of Illinois, you can use the GI Bill and you can attend in person. That is a huge difference. So that's something to consider too, is not just the training, how effective the training is, but how you're funding the program and how all of that works. But ultimately, I mean, that's a question that you kind of have to answer for yourself, given all the realities. You know, some people, again, can't attend in person. It's just not on the table. If you can, we would love to have you in person. We have a great classroom downtown Chicago in a WeWork facility that is fantastic. It's very spacious. We've got lots and lots of computer monitors you can plug into, and it's a fantastic classroom, and we love it when people want to attend in person. So yeah, if you can attend in person, I encourage it, but I don't want people to be discouraged if they can't, if that makes sense.
Nitro cold brew on tap is a great reason to attend in person as well, as somebody who lives in Chicago and goes into the office just for that.
Just for the nature. I don't think I had that when I was there, so I don't.
I'll make sure you try it next time. All right, another question in the chat. I saw that you teach AI. What does that mean?
Ooh, that's a great question. Because that's a ubiquitous term that carries a lot of weight these days, doesn't it? So really what we're learning here at Code Platoon, let me back up a few steps. I think the best way to address this is to address what sets coding boot camps apart in general. And one of the best things about a coding boot camp compared to a traditional university program, say in computer science, is that we can update our curriculum much quicker, and we can do it with much more relevant technology. So when we see new technologies coming out, whether that's a large language model or a new type of language or something, we can adapt to that if the market sees that as a need, we're seeing it as a valuable tool, we can adapt that much quicker than can a university program. That's been a huge thing over the last year, obviously, with large language models such as ChatGPT and related technologies. We're incorporating those into our curriculum as we speak. We've already started to do this. The best way to answer this question, instead of me trying to give you a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo that I would be reading off of a page, one of the best ways to address this is to go to our YouTube page right now and type in Code Platoon Whiskey graduation. That's our most recent graduation. And what you're going to see is the students working, or what they did with their most recent graduation projects, their final projects that they made at the end of Code Platoon. And you're going to get to see firsthand them explaining how they actually use these technologies, how they incorporated them into the curriculum and into a practical working website or app or something like that. So the best place to start with this is to actually see it firsthand. Again, I can read some of the things to you, but that is exactly what I'd be doing. Again, I'm not a software engineer, and Kayla might have it actually pulled up where you can. Do you have that pulled up, by the way, Kayla?
I can really quick, but I can offer a couple really quick examples of some really interesting applications graduates have created using AI in Whiskey Platoon. The ones that come to mind for me is somebody made a chess training app, and they had integrated an AI to teach the user how to play chess and to play against them as a computer opponent, which is really neat. And then I've seen a travel app that had a chatbot integration that used AI. So that's some really interesting practical applications within the projects. I will pull up the projects playlist for you right now while you answer the next question.
There we go. Yeah, and like I said, for anybody watching, even if you're not just focused on the AI question, I encourage you to watch the graduation videos. These are not videos of people just getting diplomas and certificates and something like that. This is the students debuting their final projects and explaining how they made them and what went into them. It gives you a great idea of what you're working towards at Code Platoon. It's kind of that final benchmark of saying, this is the end goal. This is what I'm moving towards. And the fact that the quality that these students are able to make in such a short period of time will blow you away. They are really quite impressive. I think the next question is, where do I apply for a scholarship? So there's two-part answer to that question. Scholarships are always a big question. We do have a scholarships page. Kayla, I think,
I've got
that? Okay, you got it?
Yeah, I've got the page. Continue with your answer.
Okay, so we have a form on the scholarship page that will give you an indication of whether or not you're eligible for a scholarship. That way you can kind of set your mind at ease whether or not you can qualify for a scholarship. These are not like university scholarships. We're not making you write 10,000 word essays for $500. That's not what's going on here at Code Platoon. Our scholarships range between 80 and 100% of the tuition covered. And we have scholarships that cover every demographic that attends Code Platoon. Now, the final decision on scholarships, we don't do the full application for a scholarship until you're offered acceptance to Code Platoon. There's a reason for that, and it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, the multi-part application process. We want to make sure that people are actually serious in getting into the program. We don't want people fully applying for scholarships if they're not going to actually apply to Code Platoon and get accepted. So once you're accepted, we work extremely hard to make sure that this is affordable. This is a big piece of Code Platoon's mission since its inception, to make sure that this is financially accessible to everyone. And I can tell you that that has rung true throughout my 4.5 years here. We work very hard to make sure this is affordable for everyone. So yeah, Kayla linked, if you look in the chat, Kayla linked the scholarship page, and you can check your eligibility, fill that out. But again, don't let cost be a barrier to applying to Code Platoon. We're going to do everything we can to make sure this is affordable. Does the scholarship include a computer or equipment needed for the program? No, we are not quite that advanced. We do a lot of work fundraising for scholarships, and they are very generous. As mentioned, they cover between 80 and 100% of the tuition, which is pretty impressive. But that's the extra that some of the VA programs will cover. We don't have that baked into the scholarship. That being said, the laptop is the only equipment that you will need for this program. A laptop and an internet connection really is all that you will need. A Mac is preferred, and there are discounts out there on the Apple Store for veterans, in case anyone is unaware. If you Google veteran discount Apple, you can find the Apple Store that gives you discounts for computers. So you can get it at a fairly affordable cost. So yeah. Next question. What's our next question?
So you already mentioned GI Bill, and we talked about scholarships as well as getting a laptop, but we haven't mentioned VR&E yet, and that is an option that can help if you are a veteran, get you a laptop as well as pay the tuition. Can you share some information about VR&E? Yes, and I'm glad you brought it up, because VR&E is one of the best things out there in the VA space. VR&E is a program through the VA that is designed to provide specific training and basically resources to help veterans get back into the workforce. Now, there's some really good things about VR&E, and then there's one downside, and I'll tell you the really good things. When you come to a place like Code Platoon, VR&E, if you're working with a counselor and they say, yes, you can go to Code Platoon, they will pay the tuition and they will pay to buy you a laptop. They will pay for all the supplies you need, and they will pay the tuition, and they will give you a living stipend while you're attending. So it's fantastic. It's a great option. It's kind of like the GI Bill, except actually a little bit better. That's the great news. The somewhat less great news about VR&E is that you do have to work with an individual counselor. VR&E is not a process like the GI Bill. If you're getting out of the military, you have the GI Bill, right? You most likely, overwhelming majority of people have GI Bill, and it's an on-off switch. You either have it or you don't, and you have X number of days left in your GI Bill. And you just get the VA to basically fund whatever it is you're doing. VR&E does require that you sit down with an actual counselor and go through the process of applying for VR&E benefits, and then you have to meet with a counselor, and that counselor has to say yes or no. So you have to make your case of why going to Code Platoon is going to help you get a job in software development. We can help you do that. We are here to help assist that, but just know going in that VR&E process is going to take longer than other VA benefits, because you do have to apply for them and find out whether or not you're eligible. It's not a cut and dry issue as it is with something like the GI Bill. So again, huge upsides. They'll pay for the whole program, give you a living stipend, buy you a laptop. Fantastic program. Downside is it's going to take a little bit longer, and you will have to meet with an individual counselor. Again, email me if you have questions about that, and I'll help direct you kind of how to do that process if you have any questions. The best thing to do is just Google VA VR&E, and you'll find a wealth of information on how to apply for it as a benefit that will help bring you to answering that question. Let's see, what's our next? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
up here. Okay, so I'm almost done with my application. What happens after I submit it? How long will it take before to know if I'm accepted? Great question. We typically try to let people know within 72 hours whether or not they're accepted. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a upside of applying early. If you're applying ahead of a deadline, you can find out whether or not you did well. And if you didn't, you can go back and fix things and resubmit. So the answer to that follow-up question is yes, you can submit multiple times. We want you to succeed. We want you to learn the skill. This isn't a trick. So yeah, you can submit multiple times, but we try to let people know within 72 hours whether or not they've been accepted or not. And once they're accepted, they're reached out to by the instructor who evaluates the application, and they will be given next steps as far as what happens. It's usually a welcome call followed by questions about funding, and then also there will be a live technical assessment just for everybody's knowledge. This is basically to ensure you didn't cheat. So if you used ChatGPT to get through the coding challenges, or if that was a temptation to do so, I assure you, you are wasting your time because it will get exposed in the live technical assessment that comes right after the application. So don't do that. That's a terrible idea. And you're not learning it anyway. So yeah, so after that, it becomes very straightforward. The steps, we kind of lay them out for you, but typically within 72 hours, we let people know.
Awesome. Next question from the chat. I am married to a veteran. What do I need to show you to be able to attend? Do I need to get something from the VA that makes me eligible?
Short answer, no. If you come to us and say, I'm married to a veteran, you know what? I don't
We
even
ask for on part 2 of the application, if you are a spouse, we ask you to send us a copy of your ID as well as your spouse's military ID. That's on the application. That's a photo file upload on the
There we go. There we go. Kayla had the more robust answer to that because I'm glad you were. I honestly was not aware. Yeah, and I think we're pretty like it doesn't, if he's a veteran, he doesn't have a military ID anymore or lost his military ID. I think probably a VA ID. I know we all have VA IDs now. As that's probably going to be just fine. So yeah, it's not like we're not doing background checks. I don't want to give away the story here, but it's not like we're tracking you down and doing background checks on you. VR&E, if you're eligible if you are a spouse, no, you're not eligible for VR&E, unfortunately. And the reason for this is because VR&E is tied directly to disability rating. So if you are not in the VA system with a disability rating, and for anyone who happens to come along this and is thinking that it requires some super high disability rating, it's not. But for spouses, it is tied to a disability rating. So if you are not a veteran with a disability rating, VR&E is not going to be an option. Husband is 100% disabled, but did not retire. Now he would very much be qualified for VR&E, but that is not, unlike GI Bill, it's not a transferable benefit because VR&E is essentially focused on reintegration of disabled veterans into the workforce. That's what the whole purpose of VR&E. It used to be called vocational rehab. That's its purpose. So that's not a transferable benefit, unfortunately, in the case of a spouse. But, and I have to reiterate this, as mentioned earlier, we have scholarships for you. So don't let cost be a barrier. You know, the scholarship's not going to come with that living stipend, but tuition, yeah, we've got scholarships for you.
To be specific, as a spouse, we do have dedicated scholarships specifically for military spouses. And in fact, 90% of military spouses who attended Code Platoon received a scholarship from us.
Yes. So definitely check out the scholarships page linked earlier in the comment thread, or if you're coming to us on YouTube, just go to our website, and I think you can find our scholarships page under resources.
codeplatoon.org/scholarships.
There you go. Too easy. So yeah, we've got scholarships for you, but unfortunately, no, VR&E is not a transferable benefit. Is there an application fee? No. No. We do have, I should offer this quick caveat. When you apply and are accepted, we do have a deposit to hold your spot. However, that is in the case of like VA benefits or 100% scholarships, those are refundable basically once the scholarship is awarded.
Awesome. A question we had received before we started, can I defer my enrollment if I need to? And what is the process for doing so?
Yes, so we allow one deferment to a future cohort. So let's say that you are applying to Code Platoon, you get accepted, and you say, I'm going to go to Zulu Platoon. And you get accepted to Zulu Platoon, and then something happens in your life. Maybe you get deployed, maybe who knows what. You say, I cannot go until the next cohort. You can do that. Beyond one deferment, though, we do make you do the application again. And a lot of that is simply practical. It's not a gotcha. It's more of a practical sense of these are perishable skills, all right? It's like learning a language. If you did a test to learn Spanish and you learned a bunch of Spanish and then you didn't do any Spanish whatsoever for 6 months, you're probably going to forget a lot of that Spanish. Kind of the same principle. So if you defer for too long, you're going to lose a lot of what you learned in the application process. So we want to make sure that you're up to speed. You can defer once, that's fairly common, especially with our demographic. We have a lot of people coming out of the military, maybe on a skill bridge program. Sometimes they'll get accepted and then their command will say, no, you can't attend for whatever reason. Usually personnel shortages, they won't let them go. And then they'll have to defer until they get out of the military and then they come as a civilian, which is great. It's perfectly acceptable. That's the most common reason for deferment that we get. So yes, you are allowed to defer at least once. Next question, how will Code Platoon help me get a job? Great question, one that I like answering because we have an awesome answer to it. So Code Platoon is very comprehensive in its efforts. And here again, I think it's worth pulling back and recognizing what Code Platoon started as. This isn't just an educational source. We're not here just to teach people coding. The goal here is to give people employable skills to start their career in tech. That's what we're here for. We're here to launch a career. And that's how we measure success. So when students graduate Code Platoon, we have a career services team that works with them at every level. Our career services team is working with the individual on resume building, interview prep, job leads, all of that. But as an organization, we're going beyond that, and we're partnering with different companies who want to hire our graduates. We're partnering with companies who have apprenticeship programs that can take our graduates directly into after graduation. We have continued corporate outreach efforts where we're trying to find out, what company X needs, and are we fulfilling that need with what our graduates are doing? So it's a bottom-up, top-down effort in that not only are we working with the individual to make sure that they have what they need to succeed in the job market, both in the hard skill of software engineering, but also in the job leads skill, because that's a huge space to navigate, especially if you've been in the military. Job hunting is a whole other skill. That's a new skill that you have to learn. We're helping you with that, but then we're also helping foster these relationships with these companies so that they know they can trust our graduates. They know that if they hire somebody from Code Platoon, they're going to know what they need to know to do the job. So it's a very, very comprehensive effort. And again, I can't stress this enough. We take that very seriously because that's how we measure success. We want to see people succeed, get jobs, start their careers. And I can tell you that in our Slack channel, when we see, such and such a graduate just got a job, everybody's cheering, everybody's happy, because that's a great marker of success right there. We don't want to just hand you a certificate that you graduated and say, hey, good luck to you. This is an ongoing effort after you graduate that you can always return to. And I should add that too. Even if 2 years down the road, after you've been working somewhere else, you come back to our career services and say, hey, I'm looking for a new role, we're still going to help. We're still willing to help you. And our career services team is very motivated about helping. They're a great group of people who are continuously impressing me in terms of their motivation and willingness to help people. So it's a whole effort, top down, bottom up. Next question I see, when are the next application deadlines? We have a calendar page. Kayla, can you share the calendar page? So that's going to have, you're going to see a couple of dates on the calendar page. You're going to see it for different cohorts, but you'll see multiple dates for each cohort. The first date is going to be the application deadline, and then you're going to see the start date as well. So be sure you're reading, which is which, but the next application deadline, I believe, is, if I'm remembering correctly, July 29th. Am I right on that?
Good job. July
Okay.
29th, that is the next evening and weekend platoon. Our next full-time cohort has a deadline of August 4th. So it's coming up, but there's still plenty of time if you want to start an application for that. And then our next DevOps and Cloud programs application deadline is September 15th.
Fantastic. Thank you. I knew I was close there. So a month, little over a month away for the next soonest deadlines. And I will tell you that even if you are brand new to coding, you've never done software coding before, you have enough time. So if you were to dive into intro to coding today and you spent some time on it every day, a month from now is enough time to do well on the application and submit a good application. It's when we get to about the 2 weeks in period, that's when it starts getting real crunch time. And it gets a little bit more difficult to say. Some people can do it really quickly. It depends on your situation. If you don't have a job, you have a lot of time every day to dedicate to it, then I would say 2 weeks, you can do that. If you're working full time and you only have maybe a couple of hours a week to dedicate to it, that's going to be a little tougher. So every situation is a little bit different, but let's see. I see from Nicholas, I saw on your website that you offered something called Quick Pass. Can you explain how that's different than applying normally? Yes. So Quick Pass actually addresses what I was just talking about, which is you come to us and let's say you're a little bit late coming to us with regards to the deadline. We have something called Quick Pass. We started pretty recently, and that is a class that is designed to help you get through these application challenges. It's an actual class rather than just the self-paced option of intro to coding. Quick Pass is designed to do two things. Number one, it's designed to have an instructor help you, explain some things to you, and work through some of these problems, but also for those who came to us late in the application cycle. So again, if you come to us just a few days before the application deadline, or maybe even a week, and you say, there's no way I can submit a good application, we've got Quick Pass. I encourage you to sign up for that and use that as a great resource, a great way to help you navigate those challenges. Now, caveat to that real quick. Right now, if you're thinking, well, I'd rather do a class than to do intro to coding, and so therefore maybe I'll just wait until Quick Pass. I'm going to encourage you to start intro to coding anyway. Start now. Start learning this skill right now. Again, to use the earlier analogy of the language, if you're going to deploy 6 months from now, whatever country you're going to, the sooner you can start learning the language of that country, the better. Even if you're going to get an intensive class a month from now to start learning that language, you're better off to at least start familiarizing yourself with the basics now and start doing it every day. So even if you would rather go through Quick Pass, sign up for intro to coding, start on it, start learning the basics now. It will do nothing but help you.
We've covered a lot today, so are there any other questions? Otherwise, I think we can let you get some time back, reflect on everything we've talked about, and if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us. Oh,
here we go. Once accepted in a program, how long are the work days? If you are attending the immersive program, it truly is immersive. it is a boot camp model, so you can expect 10 to 12-hour days, Monday through Friday, for those 15 weeks. It is an intense program. And this is back to what I was saying about the application process. We want people to know this up front. So yes, it's going to be 10 to 12-hour days for those 15 weeks. We do have absences allowed. So, this isn't like you can't miss a single minute. It's not something like that. You can, you have absences within reason. I think we have a specific number of absences allowed, but a question we get in relation to this a lot is, I'm in the reserves, I'm in the National Guard. Can I do a drill? If I have to do a Friday drill once a month or something like that, can I do that? Yes, because that's the demographic we serve. We expect that. We've had numerous students who are in the National Guard and reserves. We'll work with you on that to make sure that that's feasible. Now, the other option is the evening and weekends program. Evening weekends is going to be Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursday evenings from 5:30 to 9:30, all times central, by the way. If I'm quoting a time, that's always central time, Chicago time. 5:30 to 9:30 p.m., Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then 8 hours on Saturday, 8 to 5, 8 to 5, I think on
yes,
Saturday.
8 to 5 on
I
Saturday.
just making sure it wasn't 8:30, because weekday, our immersive cohorts typically start about 8:30, I think, but evening weekend classes, 8:30 a.m. to 5, or I'm sorry, 8 to 5 on Saturdays. That's 28 weeks in length. That's the option for those of you who have a job, don't want to let your job go, you want to go to Code Platoon, evening weekends, that's your option. And that is only, sorry.
Go ahead. I will say those 10 to 12-hour days in the immersive program, that is not 10 to 12 hours of straight up listening to lectures. It's lectures in the morning and then hands-on project and assignment time in the afternoon.
That's a good point, and thank you for the reminder, because I don't want to be, don't go thinking that you're going to be sitting and listening to somebody on a Zoom call for 10 hours. That would be drudgery. No, Code Platoon is all about practicality, and you get a lot of hands-on application for what you're learning. So everything you're doing is going to be you actually doing things. So yes, that is the majority of your time.
All right. We had some great questions today.
Ground up. I was hoping it wasn't like that. Yeah. Is there access to the workspace during the weekends if you participate in a full-time program during the week? I don't, if you're referring to
in
physical
person for the
classroom,
immersive program, if that's what you're talking about, and you correct me if I'm misunderstanding your question, but if you are intending to attend in person for the immersive program, you have keycard access. That's 24/7, Monday through Sunday, all 7 days. So yes.
I'm glad you answered that, because I just learned something. See, this is what happens when I don't live in Chicago, and Kayla has more experience in the classroom than I do. So I guess you do. You have access all the time to the WeWork facility, and it's a great facility. It really is. It's it's downtown Chicago. I always say downtown is like, I think people that come from the city are just used to that. It's not a big deal. For me, it was a big deal. I didn't grow up in giant skyscraper world, so I go down there. It's intimidating. It's a weird world.
I will say, don't make the mistake I did. If you do come in person, they take away the coffee on the weekends at the WeWork office. It's devastating. I had to actually go somewhere else and pay for coffee.
What? What? Oh, I just lost respect for WeWork.
I know.
That's why they filed for bankruptcy right there. That was it.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Awesome.
That's the whole reason. That was the entire reason.
Awesome. That was probably the most important question we answered the whole day.
Obviously, yes.
All right. Any last questions before we end the session for today? And of course, email Greg if you think of anything after it ends. That's greg@codeplatoon.org. Very easy email address to remember.
Putting it in the chat now.
You sent that just to me, but I will put it in the chat.
Oh, whoops. Oh.
There we go. All right.
Get my Zoom privileges revoked.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. This session was recorded, so you can refer back to it on YouTube in a few days if you have to. Once again, email greg@codeplatoon.org if you have any follow-up questions. Our next session is going to be Thursday, July 11th at the same time in the same link. So you can also come back if you want to listen in more or bring any other questions to a session like this. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you to all. Thank you to Kayla for helping me. And a reminder too, if you are hungry and have other questions, we do have other episodes of Coffee and Code Platoon on our YouTube channel, as well as a lot of content that you can, immerse yourself in. So peruse our YouTube channel for other questions. We've got a lot of stuff. So thank you all. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you. Bye.